Aloha, and thank you everyone for joining the space. IOV Foundation New York, episode 181. Thank you for all those who come and listen to this information in the future. I hope you guys find it as valuable, inspiring, enjoyable, and just amazing to be able to listen to this conversation and discussion that we have in these spaces, and the topics that get brought up and the information that gets stored for hopefully true historical context and reference back to what we would think of as our time today. Crypto Beast, welcome, man, and welcome, Shellfish. It's cool to have you guys here so quickly. You there, 808? Aloha, brother. Oh, and Shellfish, I thought you came up. My fault. I didn't realize you didn't, or maybe you didn't. It made the noise, and X has been doing that. Yeah, so nothing in particularly planned today. Just trying to keep these open forum conversations going. So anybody that joins wants to come up, have anything particular they'd like to talk about, feel free to. If not, I'm sure I'll find something to. And before the end of the space, of course, go over my means of our awesome title today. But yeah, open forum. If you guys want to talk DLT, it's been a really great couple days in discussions on all of the different networks, and we've had the Chainlink community really avidly join our spaces and share lots of information. It's been static. Welcome up, Shellfish. I guess it shows you as a speaker now, so maybe we're not speaker
Oh yeah,
before.
yeah, no, no. I'm a speaker now. Hi. Happy Tuesday.
Happy Taco Tuesday.
Yes, yes, Taco Tuesday.
Although I made a quesadilla, it's pretty close.
I'm eating leftover hibachi tonight. What about you, 808?
I just got home. I got some fish I dived for last week that I'm about to make today. So
Cool.
yeah,
Yeah, it's only 1 o'clock for you, right?
no, only 10:30.
10:30. That's right now. Even earlier.
Did you say you dived for it? So were you spearfishing?
Yeah, I took a spearfishing trip with some of the friends just last week and took some of the younger boys go teach them how to dive for taco and uhu. Certain fishes are more better hunting during certain times of the year. So I'll also use that. Like certain moon phases is a good time to go because certain fishes are more around certain areas. And I do use that very like yeah, I use those cycles to go fishing and diving.
I mean, you know it as well as going to the right reefs itself, just to know when fish are going to be at that reef, right? I mean, that's impressive.
Oh yes, not just fish, even limu. So limu is like the seaweed of the ocean. It's like it can be like mossy, but it's like something you can eat. It's like algae, very healthy, high in a lot of nutrients and antibacterial properties. You can use it. I use it to make salads and stuff, like an extra salad. I put it in with poke.
That sounds amazing.
What's also interesting is some plants and some animals give off certain chemicals during certain phases, which you don't want to pick these things at those kinds of times of the year because it's not healthy for you. Like kalo, there's certain times like the kalo leaf, if you don't cook it well enough, it has that itchy substance that can really inflate your innards and kind of have you suffocate if you don't cook it well or if you pick it at the wrong time of the year.
That's interesting. Different like hormones and pheromones being released by different animals, and yeah, yeah, it's almost in some sense too, as well as probably some sort of defensive mechanism that they also have for themselves. Maybe they certain time, it's a certain time of the year where they be mating or something. See, nature thought of it all.
I mean, like it's also important because some fish during certain seasonal shifts changes from a male to a female. Like a fish we call uhu here. There is actually laws around not fishing for this type of uhu during that seasonal shift because it changes from a male to a female to a male, and that cycle continues on. But it's very good eating.
I don't know if I've ever heard of that fish. Is there like a Western term for it, possibly? 808. He may be busy. Devon, welcome
Yeah,
to the outside.
parrotfish. It's a parrotfish. Sorry, parrotfish.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Hey,
Wait
what's
a sec.
going on?
Parrotfish are asexual?
Yes.
We have them in Florida. I was not aware of that. Interesting.
Oh yes, you guys have a lot of it in Florida. It actually helps also keep your reef clean, and stuff like that. Eats up all the dead algae. It also keeps away
Yeah,
yeah, bad stuff. Also like sea urchins, but sea urchins is good eating too. Like vana, we call it vana.
that's good to know. Thank you. I'm sorry, Devon. Welcome up.
Hi,
Welcome,
how's
Devon.
everybody doing?
Doing well. I'm doing well, Devon. We gonna keep our conversation going from the other day? I know you had to leave.
Yeah, yeah, I'm open to it. What's going on?
Well, Devon, we're on one side of the glass. You tell me.
One side of the looking glass, the hourglass. What's the context?
I guess you could look through an hourglass.
What glass are we referring to?
I mean, glass is glass.
Oh, okay, just looking through the glass for introspection.
For introspection, Devon.
Am I missing context or something?
Well, you were the context, but it's okay. We've lost the flow from the other day. I thought we could just catch it. It's all right.
Oh, I was the context. Are you referring to what? Oh, okay, okay, I got you. Oh yeah, man. I think we were talking about how vastly the landscape is going to change for society in the next 5 years.
Wow, wow, nice, Devon. On point.
So tell me, okay, when you say that you're going to see a significant change, could you tell me what the significant change looks like in your opinion?
Well, I mean, there's many different variations and um, of course, localizations in which this fractionalized rendering of change is going to, magnify. I think in some sort of technological senses, but you know, to one in the
Or
world,
could I
it may not necessarily seem this way. It's of course perspective.
okay, so can we ground the claim? What impacts society on a human level the most? Let's just say the major areas of life, so that way we can ground the statement.
I love it, Devon, because it's perfect. Because the answer, in my opinion, is incentives. Society is structured the way it is because you and I have an incentive to be in society the way it is. the monetary means of the relevance behind your relation and my relation, the app's relation to me and the relation to you, is all monetarily deduced. And not that I think that the world is going to monetarily shift from uh, monetary to post monetary in the blink of the eye. But we are entering the landscape of what will be the predecessor to that sociological ability for the change to take place. And for that to be what would be, in my opinion, a stepping stone, a foundational marker in the way that we persist through history, persistence. I think that when I speak about the great change, that is looking back maybe 50 years from now, we will say that was the great change, the magnifying lens in which the essentially the flywheel became so proportional and with its directional inertia that there was almost no means of going back in the way that we could word it.
So while I understand you, I still feel like that's too general and too broad to really hone in on a singular definition. Please use. We need something more grounded for us to truly understand what quantifies significant change. For an example, I will give you my definition. We have the six major pillars of life: finance, health, family, emotions, intellect, and spirituality. Those are the six major pillars of life. If you see significant change in all six of those dynamics that are visible to something that we can pinpoint, then that's something that we can quantify. But if we just say incentives, incentives are in every aspect of life, so it could be a minute incentive. I need something more tangible to say, hey, that was a significant change in the last 5 years.
I love it. And so I actually would say that we have seven of them. Of course, if this was Einstein saying it, I think this is more a quote from him or someone on that relevant in that time. Actually, maybe there's seven of them, right? If you think about compounding or compound interest, right? It's that one of those pillars. But maybe the eighth pillar, let's call it the incentive to thrive. Is there an incentive today to thrive? Or is the incentive today to survive and to do whatever you can in the means of that survival? I think when many are faced with the ability to, let's use the word indulge, in the means of being able to survive without having to worry, I think the means of the incentive in thriving becomes more applicable in settings of being able to generate incentives for individuals or entities and parties to take place in.
Okay,
Um,
so let's go with that. Let's focus on the incentive for the human need to want to thrive. What quantifies significant change in that you will see in the next 5 years?
Abundance.
I really like that. Persistence jumped in with a beautiful word. I think 808 put his hand up too, so let's let him jump in, and then we'll go back to you, Persistence, and then roll over back to you,
No,
Devon.
we gonna let Persistence go for it. He had his hand up first, and let him finish his thought, man.
Yeah, I think we can. We're going to be changing the complete um, whole mindset of humanity in the sense that we've always been under the assumption that we're under the belief that we live on in a world of I'm having a brain fart. What's the opposite of abundance? Scarcity, right?
Scarcity.
Everything's scarcity, right? Because when you live in a world of scarcity, you kind of lead with fear, right? But when you live in a world of abundance, you lead with hope and you lead with love. And you lead with you don't longer feel the need to compete as much. You kind of just let things play out the way they're supposed to play out, and you're not as concerned with other people as you are just concerned with keeping your side of the street clean and making sure that your family's right. And I think thriving, like you said, we can thrive through abundance. We don't have to fight to achieve success anymore. It's more just like be a good person, set the right intention, set the right actions, and then we can all thrive. I believe once we start living off the land and actually living off the resources of the land instead of them stolen from us. Go ahead, Crypto B.
Everybody, I kind of lost my train of thought with just thinking of what you were saying.
Sorry about that.
My
Not
fault.
no no no. It's not anything bad or sorry to be about because it is like how Devon was saying, it's such a broad concept of how Death Ranger was explaining some of these things. Because, like Devon is saying, some of these things can be very nuanced and very specific to how changes happen in each and every one of our lives, to even just specific cultures. Like for my culture, we had a big shift and change during COVID time where we had that telescope that was being built. I remember sharing it and talking about it, where a lot of that change happened within our communities to where it really broke down their own biases and their own intent rather and coming together as a community and pushing for a greater cause for what was they're there for, instead of trying to bring up their own personal feelings to make a decision for the greater good. But instead they actually, went back to some of their old ways, which is true. We are relearning some of the things our ancestors left behind, that is still yet so profound today that it's helping us learn even more about some of the technology we have now and how to apply it differently, and have a broader thought of mind and thought process of how we see things and how our intent is shaped by the things we see and the things we let shape it. And then, and relearning some of these things really knocks down our own biases. And it's always a learning process, and change happens on all types of level. And trying to put it in a certain cage, we have to have a certain mindset to grow that way. And then you have the other level of that macro feeling of how that affects on the macro level, which all comes down to how we think and how we process a lot of this, which is mind-blowing, because the interplay between a lot of them is all connected, like how we thrive to survive and sometimes survive to thrive. And that's the thing that I always like to say too, man. It's pretty crazy that you brought that one up.
Sit, we're on a synchronization, and this is us looking through the glass, and one day it'll be our past. And I think Devon, in the last conversation we had, one of the things that I had referenced specifically talking about physicalities of change in the realms of automation and robotics, and of course AI, being large language models particularly being paired with, I think, a lot of those labor perspectives of change that'll be able to occur in the next very short relevance. I mean, it's already starting to occur in major aspects, but in the next 5 to 7 years. I'd like to talk about biology though itself, biologics, and our thought of aging as a disease, and even thinking about from 808's understandings of the different animals that exist in the habitats that he gets to observe, and from a perspective of the relevance of the different ways that, from an age perspective, like turtles in particular, who are such an interesting creature, right, moves so slow. And you would think from its inability to what we think as moving fast, which I guess some turtles can kind of move fast, um, can live an extraordinary period of time in comparison to us today. And trying to take all of these different types of things as relevance, being able to feed it into a feedback loop, which allows us access to the biologics in which we are. And we already have things like organoids existing, and concepts like xenobots, which is a more advanced version, sorry, anthrobots, which is a more advanced version of xenobots, and all of these different types of means of immunology is essentially just taking what the body already has and giving it the proper steps in guidance for it to just solve its own mysteries and issues that we may think of as an issue. And so, maybe that being one of them as well, Devon, which I've been saying this for the last 2 years or so. You know, if you think you can survive for another 10 to 15 years, plan on surviving for a few hundred years because it's probably going to become very relative as possible.
Biomimicry is a industry that always fascinates me. I shared something about this bot. My friend is actually one of the guys on top of this project, and it's this bot that uses like the understanding of how jellyfish uses wave energy to propel itself while it just floats on the surface, and it uses that understanding to use the wave energy to move itself. It also has solar panel functionality to get energy, but it's so crazy because this thing is able to use solar energy and wave energy to just scour the ocean and just collect data, which they have been using it for the past 4 to 5 years to help with the NOAA and like the tsunami warnings and earthquake warnings, which Hawaii has been one of the best in having these types of systems in place for quite a long time, actually. Also have the data centers to kind of help propel that. So it's kind of crazy when we merge biology and technology and robotics together, because we see a lot of the I always like this because even computers are built off the architectural understanding of how our body works and how our brain works, how information is shared between your different synapses, and how it controls the functionality of your every little parts of your body, your fingers, all your feelings you have in your hands to your feet. It's all mapped out and mapped out for over generations and generations of time now, which we use today. It's so crazy.
Look at the turtle shell. You know, it gives us a calendar, and it's interesting to think about clocks. You know, clocks weren't that prevalent in society until the Industrial Revolution. So, you know, what did the modern day clock on every wall in the house really do to society? You know, did it speed it up? I think so. Did it stress it out? I definitely think so. You know, um, time is as some would say, time is unfuckwittable, but I think it has been fucked with.
Oh, I agree with you, the fuck with part. I mean, we can go back to the Renaissance era, to the times of the Pope. I think it was Pope Gregory the 13th that ushered in the Gregorian style calendar.
That's
But
right.
we can even go further back to even the zodiac signs of how the Babylonians time mapped out the cosmos, and how the stars and how all those formations. How we see it today ain't the same because of the Western ideological practices that framed it. Wherein the older ways and the indigenous understanding is how that change happens over time. That's why you have that dual nature of moon phases and solar phases that help kind of make that change unfuckwittable, because change is always constant, which was understood for a very long time. And without that change and the mapping of the celestials, we then fuck with time itself. And yes, time has been fucked with, and how we measure time today ain't how time has been measured way before, how after it got fucked with. But yeah, I
Yep.
agree with you on that.
And Death, if you don't mind, I want to bring up another society change I see. You know, going back to like the cypherpunks and the vision, which my understanding is of their vision was that, you know, things would be open source. Um, you know, tools would be created for people. It wouldn't be necessarily products that were created for people to profit off of. It was more just people would create tools for humanity to use to thrive off of, right? And if I'm wrong, please correct me. That's my understanding of the cypherpunk's vision,
No, no,
right?
you're
Um,
on it,
th-
bro.
this
David Chom is one of them people should actually look at, because he is actually the one that's coined the Godfather, or
Right.
the envisioner of cypherpunks, which he actually the one that created something called the blind signature. He has a patent for that, which actually Bitcoin kind of uses that model inside its system. Which inside the white paper, Satoshi even referenced some of his work that David Chom did in the early days. But yeah, that's the cypherpunk movement is one of those big, big
And I
changes.
could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure from what I've researched and what I've heard, that in Asia, that you know, that belief is much more prevalent. That, you know, and they say that the Chinese always steal our IP, which, you know, in a world of America where everything is competitive and everything is, you know, based on um, profits and losses. It's like, yeah, they may have stolen from us, but to them, it's just like, well, it was created for them to thrive off of. Now everyone can use it, open source it, and let's see what happens, you know. And I think that once you take that 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 view, that ideology, whatever you want to call it, sky's the limit, because once you release the cat out of the bag, you can't put it back in, right? And that's kind of what's happening with AI right now. Is like, you know, I know it's closed source right now, but the minute they open that up, the sky's the limit. You know, people are going to go at it. People are going to create models that are just going to that they can't keep up with, right? And like I said, once you put the cat out of the bag, obviously it could be used for good, but humanity, I think, once you take away the once you take away the competition of humanity and the rat race of humanity, and you kind of slow it down, and you take away the incentives of being in a rat race, you can really change the world. And if people don't get incentivized to be shitty people either, I don't think.
Well, if you're asking my opinion on it, I think the cyberpunk movement was hijacked by the technocrats. Although I think them to be very benevolent,
But isn't it thriving in Asia right
nonetheless.
now? Like, I could be wrong. I've never been to Asia, but from what I've heard, it's a totally different mindset over there. It's like, we're going to open source everything and allow people to really, you know, and people call it communism, I guess, right? What, I guess so. I don't know. You know, I could be wrong.
Well, I think there's pluses and minuses all over the place, you know, benefits and cons. As in, if you look at something like Shanghai, I mean, they got flying taxis, they got robots in the streets. It's like you literally could feel like you're in like a robotic future. But there are also other parts of China which, you know, could look worse than the United States. So, plus and minuses. I mean, it's like it depends on the lifestyle you want to live as well.
Which I think is key, right? Because you can't force everybody into a technocratic state, and you can't force anybody into the opposite, right? So just allow people to do what they want to do, and if you know that's why these 15-minute cities, although they're painted as being a negative, you know, um, maybe they're necessary. You know, we'll see.
Ooh, that 15-minute city narrative is, yeah, always interested me a lot of ways, because I was, like, for like smart technology, we always had smart models that we can still use today, that helps us be more sustainable and having better sustainable practices, and how we use our resources and all of that. See, that narrative to me kind of diminishes the actual movement of being more sustainable within all the different communities, because that's also a big change that still yet uses a lot of historical understanding of being sustainable while bridging in the newer technology to provide that
Are you,
sustainability in a better way.
are you saying that they created that narrative of the 15-minute city trying to, you know, blackball the whole idea of a self-sustaining city? Is that what you're saying?
Yes and a no, I would say, kind of pushing towards that thought process.
Right. Because you could say it's a 15-minute city, or you call it a freedom city, right? And I guess it's all about your perspective.
It's interesting because during
It's,
the
it's like CBDC and stablecoin.
Exactly. Exactly.
we still have one of those places that was kind of built and structured here on Maui for the fire victims, which has still not been used. It's wild, but they built that very quickly.
What is it?
I forgot. I gotta go back and see what company brought it here. It's already made homes. I think some of them are 1 to 2 bedroom, some of them are just 1 bedroom, some of them are studios, but they were able to bring them here, prop it up real quick, and stuff like that. But they had a problem with getting water and having tied into the water, which the county was giving problems, which was a bit. It's been a fucked up situation from the beginning, and that narrative was used to push this sort of project that has supposed to be used for the people and the victims, has never been used for the peoples and victims still yet. It's wild.
It's always the wildest thing to me when I hear about water scarcity issues on an island surrounded by the ocean. It's like how?
Especially when, you know, we have primary water right below us.
Well, because the process to convert salt water to fresh water is very expensive, but it's not. I'm not saying it can't be done. It can be done, but fresh water in the islands is a precious source. And for generations, that source has been getting depleted and diverted to the point where a lot of the aquifers no longer exist. And when some of these aquifers no longer exist, the land itself starts to die and decay. Lahaina is a very good example of that, that just dryness throughout the land, which I shared all the time. You know, for generations, they were told that if these things will continue to happen, this place will be too damn dry for any livable thing or to have any resources to survive there. And
Again, back to that scarcity mindset, right?
yeah, and that's what happens. That
Leading with fear.
unsustainability just happens.
And it's crazy because it's wild because I listen to a lot of Bitcoin spaces and they are very big proponents of scarcity. You know, that's what makes their protocol so valuable, according to some people. And they have that, and you can hear it in their voices. It's a scarcity mindset. You know, it's like a leading with fear. You know, that's how they get people to into do certain things. I'm not saying that other communities don't do that as well. It's very prevalent in other places, but that's another mindset that we have to get away from. Is like you don't have to lead with fear. You know, of course, fear is instinctual in some instincts, but when you try to manipulate people with fear, there's usually something wrong. You know, and when you can identify that, you know, you can help you with things like COVID or any kind of like weird psyop situation
I
or anything
think
in life.
I think fear is like an acknowledgement. It's a choice, right? When you have fear. Now, to be scared, that can be a moment of sense angst, right? Your senses are angst for whatever moment in terror there, has some predetermined state that they were going to react from. But fear, yes, I think fear is a choice. It's an action placed upon a belief. And, to your point, persistence, it's competition, right? It's wanting to be the victor in this competitive environment, and I really do think that collaboration, um, take it from the XRP ledger's ethos, right? But collaborative environments is where we're going in the future.
But see, even fear is something that is profound in our own changes on a micro scale too, yeah, within ourselves. It can trigger so many different things in our body and are so many different intentions that we never thought we had without accepting that fear and understanding what fear can bring about. Because it does bring about a lot of different things. You know, you have people afraid of fireworks, you have a noise that triggers you. Those are deep inner fears that you have that physically manifests itself in different ways. So even those changes within yourself is very very profound.
Yeah, and it's like, to the person who has the fear of heights, right? Um, it's interesting, right? Because I am a similar individual, an avid fear of heights. However, strap me on a parachute and the fear goes away. It's like I needed the state in which to essentially provide the satisfaction for the fear to dissipate, or this belief needed to be consistent with this relation that I have with the state for the fear to dissipate, or
You
to
ever
be
jumped
able
out of a
to
plane, Jeff?
That's you measuring your courage.
measuring the courage. I like that one as well. Measuring the courage. This is something that I think that a vast majority of us, back to Vaughn, back to this question of possible change, I think a vast majority of us are actually measuring this and questioning it today because of the way that the world is for the majority of us. I think as we go forward in a very, very short period of time, 5 to 7 years, there is going to be a large amount of people questioning this and publicly questioning it, speaking about it because of the large vastness of the collective synchronization of the
What happens when
belief
you take away the
of that.
Mockingbird media? What happens when you take away the Mockingbird media? You know, that mass media. I can't imagine what could happen. If you think about the amount of anxiety that those
What
people
does
have
the
put.
what does the MSM become, right? Because there is, for every end there's a beginning, for every beginning there's an end. What does it becometh for everyone who say interacts with it today? What do you think, persistence?
I think it becomes this. I think it becomes an interaction of people. of real people. You know, I, I I don't think the mass media is going to be anything like we think it is. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball, but
So,
uh,
really, the search for information persists.
yes, absolutely, absolutely. But
You know, it's wild though what you
people start searching within themselves as opposed to looking outside of themselves for the answers. I know that's what I've done over the past couple of years, and it's been incredibly, um, it's been incredible. To say that, right? I've learned more about myself in the past 4 or 5 years, which has benefited myself and my family so much. Now I'm constantly learning new things, so I think that's a journey, right? But now I can try to help other people do that, right? And once they do that, they can help another person. It's like paying it forward, and yeah, it's pretty cool if you think about, you know, changing. You do that to a couple people, and then that compounds like interest, right? It compounds.
I love it. 808, please go ahead, man.
No, I just had a thought when you guys were talking about mass media and that, yeah, how we are living in a moment not of just technology change, financial change. We're seeing changes in a whole different in a lot of different industries, even how information is gathered and shared. You know, before everybody was getting it through a radio, through newspaper articles, through word of mouth, evolved through sharing of internet, emails, yada yada yada. You started to evolve to different social platforms, and now more so getting to the point of peer-to-peer networking, even on the level of talking in spaces and sharing information very quickly. We see how this changes even how people gathers the information. Remember, like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, people weren't in these spaces a lot. Then they kind of found out how quickly information comes through these spaces, like on a dime, and how you are able to connect to people that is more closer than the media outlets themselves to the source of the information you're trying to gather. And then you also see how people develop a way to control people's intentions through sharing of information, and taking control over people's intent by understanding what they are so focused on, which is mind blowing that we all have the ability to really take a sit back and observe all these different interactions. And there's so much that if a person themselves aren't aware of the vastness of it, it will just slip them by without them knowing. The only thing that will know are the things that they are aware of. But once you start to be more aware on a more macro level of observation, you start to see some of these things play about and how it interplays with each other. It's mind blowing that we are able to take this information and come to consensuses about a lot of different things between all of these different communities, and it's crazy.
Also, I could speak to the way I would like to see things play out. I think, you know, in an ideal world, I think if we become more community become more like smaller communities, you know, and you kind of like what I would like to do with my hopefully one day if I'm wealthy, I want to start my own community of my friends and family, you know, and I want to live off the land. And it doesn't mean I'm going to try to keep anybody out, but um, I just want to have my own space, and then that way my family can live off of that land for generations to come. And when I mean off the land, I want to farm it, and I want to, you know, to the best of my abilities, obviously, with help with technology and whatnot. But you know, I think that's where we go. I think we go to more of a almost like it was back in the 1800s, right? But like with the help of AI and with the help of technology, I think we can do it on a global level. You know, everyone can kind of have their own sovereignty, right? I think that's the most important thing is having your own sovereignty and not being forced to do anything particularly that you don't want to. As long as you're not hurting anybody, as long as you're not creating damage to the land and to, you know, to what God provided us, you know, you're free to do what you need to do. And I think we're being given the tools to do that right now. It hasn't played out completely, but I think we see the beginning workings of it. I wonder, what's going to happen to these lines on these maps, as far as states and countries and nations. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but I hope we get to more of a smaller like demographic in the sense that like we're more focused on people around us and in our streets and our communities as opposed to worrying about what's going on across the world. I'm very curious about understanding what's going on across the world, but it's not my business. I need to worry about constantly every day, and I definitely don't need to send an army over there to try to control them, right? Like I'd rather go visit those places and learn about them than have to constantly watch about on the news or whatever. If I could just focus on my area, so.
Well, here's the thing. How about we connect your area and across the world, and we make it bridged in 30 minutes? Do you care
Incredible.
about it
Yeah.
now? Are you able to care about it, right? You see, like how the
That's a
relevance
good point.
becomes
That's a good
now
point.
you and I are able to socialize and physically socialize in 30 minutes.
Yeah, that's a great point to think about like that, because I think that's very possible too. I think it's going to happen.
They actually said that it's really difficult to connect with more than, I think, is it 100 or 200 people? That's why people in big cities will tend to videotape and not actually help people that are getting distressed. So I'm curious, like, if we make the world even smaller, connecting with instead of a few 100,000 or a million people in a confined space, if we now make the globe even smaller, is it going to make us connect on a deeper level, or is it actually going to complicate it even more?
Ooh, that's interesting. I would say complicate it even more. Because at the end of the day, we still are human beings. We still have our own biases, our own likes and dislikes, and we're gonna come across those that we don't dislike a lot. Um, until we as individuals learn how to accept, like how I like to call it, how I was taught living with aloha. If something is practiced every day, it's not something you just think you would just not work on. You just work on one day and not work on the next day, or you decide to work it on that day. It's not what you decide, it's something you work on every day, living in humility, acceptance, and all of that. And until people are able to live like that, I don't see any of this coming to fruition a lot, because it does take a collective conscious understanding of that level to do that. I'm not saying that you do have communities out there that live that, like especially here in Hawaii, we have a lot of that, which has been diminished heavily, but you still have those communities out there that really live with that aloha spirit and living that way, not just in Hawaii, all over the world. But yeah.
Well, again, I think it comes down to the fear. I think once whether we want to acknowledge it or not, there's been a degree of fear and anxiety that's been placed on society for the past, let's just say, 100 years. And I would say it's been fueled by the mockingbird media, mass media, in the sense that they show you JFK getting his head blown off, or they'll show you planes flying into the towers, or they'll put on a show where the kid gets kidnapped from the park and all this stuff, and it's like that stuff creates anxieties subconsciously that you don't even realize, right? And that's why you don't go and stop that person, right? Because of the subconscious anxiety that you have that person might hurt you. Well, if you take away a lot of that and people start understanding, they start looking at people as human beings instead of being black or white or being a certain ethnicity or whatever. When a lot of those anxieties get taken away, I think people will gravitate to being good human beings because that's what we're made to be. And once we start living in this, I'll get away from this scarcity mindset of this rat race that we live in constantly, which I think is happening slowly. I think a lot of that anxiety goes away and people become much more better people. And the cool thing about right now, for example, crypto beats is I can learn about the aloha, right? I can learn about that, right? And I didn't know about that before. But hearing it from your voice, like that's something I want to dig deeper on, and maybe that's something I'll teach my children. So it's interesting. It could go either way.
And I agree with you on people, and it's getting better in the sense of the understanding of the in depth of living in a sustainable lifestyle, the holistic view. I've been seeing a lot more. Uh, how can I say, people being vocal about it than how it was 5 to 10 years ago, where you would never hear much talks about it or just living sustainable. All you would hear is something else, or a little bit in the back corner of some arguments. You hear people talking about this, where you had cultures living this lifestyle for thousands of years, and for generations and generations. And in my own generation, only almost diminished to even not even understanding our own history. See, and that's why I'm one of those that's a proponent fighter for understanding history more so than how we are taught today, because a lot of our history as humanity has been rewritten and reinterpreted and shared and taught in some of our high level, even collegiate areas for a long time. Even you had professors who would lose their job to try teaching some of the truth about some of our history, whether it was taught with historical context or not. And there's so much, how we shared about how we see time and all of that, which is so important to our everyday lives. It really shows change in a whole demographic of the world, not just one area. And that's big. That's so big. Even the controlling of knowledge and how that was shared for over generation is big. Like a lot of people's understanding about Egypt, they didn't even know that place was in even Egypt, or where a lot of the philosophers from Greek and Roman time kind of got their knowledge in mathematics from. A lot of these things really at a level of understanding put into a lot of context to actions taken today or therefore after, which is so mind blowing to be aware of once you start to see this, because you see that pattern happen over and over again. And when you become aware of that pattern, we are able thus then to create a foundation to teach the younger generation how to be a better steward of the knowledge they hold, to better be a steward of the community they live in. And to me, that connection of trying to teach our younger generation to be a better steward had been diminished heavily, which I now see, like how you're saying, the switch into that movement of teaching that again and teaching that mindset and that way of life is coming back again.
Well, I think you're a great example of that. I mean, I don't know you personally, but from what I've heard you speak, you're very family oriented. You're very, you do speak a lot about your roots and a lot about where you came from. And I think that is a great example of what we need to do more of, right? Like they try to destroy your history, but the strength of your community can allow that, right? And I think that's something that is incredible, right? And I know that's something I'm going to be more aware of moving forward with my lineage and my bloodline. Is like, we're gonna make sure the story is correct, and we're gonna tell it correct to our children. And we're gonna tell them the story about all this stuff that happened and how we regained our sovereignty back, and it's gonna be a story of triumph, right? Which hasn't happened before. This story has always been co-opted. Um, Many times over by the bad people, right? By people who won. Well, this time the people are going to win. And when the people win, sky's the limit. So we've never seen this happen really before. Every revolution, I feel like, has been co-opted. And it's almost like, it's like everyone's like, we're finding all this new technology, all this innovation right now. But what if that's already been here, right? What if it's already been here and it's been preserved for people like us who've been through the fire, who've been through, the burning of the Phoenix and are rising and been through the trials and tribulations. I don't know. It's really, really, really cool to think about. And I think that with more people like the people on stage right now, the people in this room, humanity has a really good shot. So just keep talking.
I think we've got a great shot to make it what we've always wanted to be. What do you think, Devon?
Man, I was just enjoying listening to everybody speak. Beast, persistence. I aligned with a lot of things. There were so many topics that I wanted to chime in on, but I didn't want to stop anybody while they were in flow. But I guess persistence spoke to the kind of the society that he wanted to see. I guess in the future, this is something that I've had discussions with for many years with many different people that I've talked to that have kind of shared certain concepts with me, taught me certain concepts. And I'm a huge proprietor of the 80/20 rule. So I know we all know it from an XRP standpoint, but when I actually discovered it, it was like part of one of the reasons why I stayed within the XRPO ecosystem, because that's a huge uh, foundational proponent for myself, right? I do
Can you
believe
elaborate
that,
on that, Devon?
and that yeah, I'll say it right now. So I believe that society, 80% of us are pretty much on par with each other, to say it fairly, right? Um, you will always have 10% that will excel, and you'll have 10% that will be on the decline. And I try to use the words loosely, right? And to give you an example, you will always have 10% of people who will be needing assistance because of their physical inabilities, mental disabilities, things of that nature. And you will have 10% of people who will always excel because of their same physical abilities to go beyond the human body limits from time to time. They can excel in thinking, arithmetic, things of this nature, right? So you're always going to have that. But what happens in the society that we are currently living in right now, we still have that 80, 10, and 10 structure, right? The 80/20 structure. However, the 10% are using their resources that they have been given, and they are running unchecked, meaning that the 80% group majority are not checking the 10% who will have the resources, the um, advanced thinkings, arithmetic, rhetoric, all of these things, the tools that they have that they are naturally given, they are using it to suppress and abuse the 80%, right? And how they use that is by one of the major tools of divide and conquer, right? We are not realizing that even though they might have the uh, advanced technology, or they might have uber amounts of wealth, or they might have this or that. Everything that we look at as the 80% as a disadvantage, our biggest advantage is the fact that we have the majority, right? So until we get to that point where we look at each other and realize that we are all on the same team, us as the 80%, the 10% that are excelling will always abuse us. And that's one of the things that I'm actually seeing shift, right? I'm starting to see, it's unfortunate because I have to say simultaneously, I do not believe it will be in my lifetime, but I am seeing that shift happen to where we are becoming more towards that wealth of the 80% having control of everything.
But Devon, you are the catalyst, right? So it has to happen in your lifetime. I mean,
Whether
sorry.
sorry, go ahead. Persistence.
No. God, I spoke too much.
No, I was going to say you're 100% right. I should let me clarify that the change is always happening, right? Because change is always happening 24/7. It's self evident. But I guess the manifestation of that vision that I want to see, I don't perceive that happening within my lifetime.
You're younger than me, Devon. It's gonna happen in your lifetime, all right? Just fucking with
I hope. I mean, I hope. I'm always for it.
Whether the 80% is in control or not in this particular algorithm, I think that the incentive behind how you had mentioned, Devon, right? The means of wanting to access being the 10% and then using that 10% means as some sort of you know, facilitator of doom for another, just so you can create more of that percentage gain for yourself. I think the incentive today is there for you to do that. There is no means of recourse and reasoning for why you would not do potentially whatever you could do to get that means of gain. But with an incentive change and a structural sociological means of understanding that representation, I think the entire agenda, whether we realize it's an agenda or not, kind of changes.
real quick before Shelly goes.
Well,
Oh, go ahead, sorry. Go ahead.
no, I just wanted to get a little bit more context to make sure, because I do think that a lot of the people here within this specific space, because I've known a lot of you for years now, would are I'm not gonna say are in that 10%, but I don't believe that a lot of us are far from that 10%, right? Because we are forward thinking people, right? So again, we're talking on concepts that might not necessarily apply to the totality of us, right? And when I say that, I mean, like, for example, let's just say persistence, right? I know persistence is somebody who is mm, um, somebody who will think outside of the box, right? He's not going to necessarily go with the status quo. You give him the resources or the opportunity to acquire certain resources, I could see him going inside of that 10%, right? The problem and I'm not sure what you were saying there, Frank.
Put me
I'm
in the
just saying
game,
this to
Devon.
give
Just
more
put me in the
clarity.
game.
Yeah, I think that the problem is when people get into the 10%, they don't necessarily do the things that are necessary for the 80% to have the opportunity to even rise to that stratosphere, right? So the things that we are seeing right now that I would like to change is when people like ourselves who are forward thinkers, and I'm not just talking monetarily, but it could be in anything, right? If you have the capability to inspire change, to also trickle down what it is that you have gained. And a lot of times people, when they get to a higher level, they want to stay there and they hoard it wherever it might be, right? So let's say, for example, if it was information that got me to the next level, I would like to trickle down that same information. If it was pure monetary resources that got you to that next level, please trickle it down, because that is the only way where the total conglomerate can actually succeed.
Devon,
And
I
if
love
the
that.
80% are not getting the resources that they need, the 10% actually hinder themselves as well, because they become consumed by greed, which is what we are living in the current time right now.
That's right.
Devon,
It's a
that's
double-edged
awesome.
sword that you eventually fall on.
But listen, that's absolutely 100% right. And let's get to that 10%, and then let's open up the doors. Let's bring everybody in with us, right? Because the people who were in the 10% before were weak, right? They thought they had to control people so they didn't lose that 10%. But what we understand, or hopefully we're getting to an understanding, is that we can all live in abundance. And the more people we bring into the 10%, the more this world thrives, right? I've always thought about like I have like a North Star, right? And my North Star has my wife in it, has my children, has my child in it, and it has my immediate family in it, and my friends. Now, if I don't make, if I'm not everyone's gonna make it to my North Star, right? But like, if I don't make it there with them, it's almost a failure to me. So I'm going to bring as many people in with me, right? And that's the mindset that I think a lot of people in this community have. And I'll leave it at that. Go ahead, Charlie. Sorry.
I don't know why, or if this is even relevant, but there was a really cool Massimo video today. I don't know if you guys caught it. It was on my feed, about the sound systems that they're using in concerts right now. Bear with me because it sounds like it's really off topic. So when you went to concerts before, the concert speakers were set up in stacks next to each other, so it could go across the crowd. It would distribute the sound, they thought, right? However, now they're finding that vertical actually works better. And so I'm wondering if now, like, we have this massive base, right? Like, we have the distributed ledger base, but now we're stacking. We've got layer one, layer two, like, we're actually doing this. So now we have this massive base and the vertical that's going. And maybe that's why our speaker is getting so much more effect through the network, because it kind of I don't know. This was the concept like that was going in my head. It's just our speaker base is a lot wider, so it can be built a lot taller. I don't know. Maybe that doesn't make sense to you guys, but it it made sense to me when I was watching it.
No, it does. It does, but
Okay,
we have to be very careful what we blast out of it, because we could blast out of it and blow everyone's ears up, and then everyone's dead, right? And so we have to make sure that before we turn the speakers on, it's going to play the melody of love for all, right? So we're getting to that point, I think. I got your analogy.
thank you.
Did everyone else get the analogy?
Probably not. I'm quite weird.
Kind of got lost. I'm not gonna lie.
It made sense to me.
Well, it was similar, like what you were talking about percentages when you were talking about the 10% and the 20%, right, Devon? It's essentially like, if we're going to get everybody on the same rhythm, if we're going to have everybody synchronize, right, there needs to be a melody that everybody can agree upon, so that when the speaker gets turned on, not everybody's killing each other because they don't like this, they want something else, right? The means of disincentivizing survival thoughts and incentivizing thriving thoughts. And thriving, right, is easily accessed through collaboration because the means of being able to produce actionable states increase in efficiency the more means of production of inertia you're able to generate. And this goes in so many different categories of state change.
Okay.
I put it in the pill if you want to
Okay.
watch it
That's a
later.
that's a tough conversation to have. Honestly, I've had this conversation numerous times. You're basically talking about overriding biology. You're talking about overriding. Um, yeah, I'll just stick with biology, and I think that that's more complex statement because the path of least resistance is what's gotten us to this part thus far. I think that the lowest common denominator that we as humans can share in order to get a task done is to agree upon the simple fact that we want to thrive, we want to live, not thrive, but just survive. That makes us act together or play well in group environments. That makes us share resources and things like that just because we want to survive. So by saying you want to hardwire or rewire our hardwiring to make us not want to go based off of our survival tactics to put us in the mindset of thriving, I think that that is what religion has tried to do numerous times. And I'm not going to say has failed, but has given us the results that we see today. And you can decide whether that is a pass or a fail.
And I think religion is like a very short term in means of relevance of that kind of example of like how we could see the see affiliation of means of guidance through thought and trying to be like large circles of synchronization. And you go all the way back, right, from what we think historical context provides to things like possibly the Sumerians and writings we have like the Bhagavad Gita and things like from the Veda, which speak about a much deeper understanding of a collaborative synchronization behind the underlying metaphysical that exists. And it's very hard to know exactly how society was, of course, at this pretense, because historically, history is written not by the valors of love, but the victors of bloodshed. And so, take that for what you will for any historical context, of course, that we have today that we can reference. But of course, unless it was individually passed down from generation to generation, similar to like things that 808 most likely has access to, but probably a vast majority of people do not. And yeah, the question of you had referenced it changing the biology. Devon, if I had to ask you, from what we at least think of the neurological structure of the brain and the way that the body operates, where is the means of that, mm, the plasticity of the underlying want to survive kind of manifests itself? And I think a lot would probably agree it's the part of the reptilian part of the brain, as it's referenced many a time. And I think with not only this growth and change of maybe our own biologics over time, the accessing of the ability to understand that there may be many wolf dens in a particular area, and those wolves may be in fear of scarcity and eventually kill another pack of wolves and inhabit their area. But we, as observers and manifestors of this unique perspective that we're able to converse and synchronize over, can come to the conclusion that if those wolves may have collaborated together, they would have had the best shot at surviving. And because of this, possibly they lost many wolf lives that would have not been lost. So we have that, I think, same option here. 808, please go ahead.
I like what you pointed out, Devon, because that is something very important too. I like how I always share the stranger you're pointing towards me, because I was actually going to share something that here and what I have learned through the teachings of Michael Puna, and this has something been done for thousands of years. It's how resources and land was distributed here in Hawaii. It's called the Ahupua'a system, or from the mountain to the ocean. The understanding of you as a part of the community as a whole, and your responsibility to take care and be a good steward of the resources you are assigned to was not just for your own self, but for the greater good of your community as a whole. With this um, basic understanding, that's not just basic, but foundational to the concept of ahupua'a, and also part of aloha, is that it was our responsibility to take care, to also provide to the survival and the thrive, and for us to thrive as a community as a whole. Whether you were a li'i, a mo'i, or just a regular person. A mo'i is like a chief, someone of high ranking, which they didn't even hold that much power, like how it's romanticized today. Um, the people actually held the power, which even in the consensuses of how resources was distributed was done through a communal effort and not the effort by a single a chief, which has the understanding of that even within my own culture changed. So even that understanding history at that level changes, which then thus has our own intent and understanding of how models were created and now pushed today, which is wild because I see a lot of my own keiki understanding a lot of these concepts we use today and bridging it together with concepts that we had used throughout our generations and understanding how to thrive and survive in an island place where we're surrounded by um, a lot of salt water and whatnot, and it's profound. It's so crazy how a lot of the concepts a lot of our Western counterparts misinterpreted actually comes about in also futuristic terminology we use today, like how we always talk about with quantum theories and also the creation, chants, and stories of our past ancestors, which is always mind blowing because bridging the gap between technology, his history, and modern thinking is to me something of very important as well. But yeah, there's a good point you was pointing out, Devon. I like that.
I appreciate it, bro. Appreciate it. Is anybody talking?
I don't think at the moment anybody was talking there now. Just thinking about where to pick it up. I'm going to probably close it up in the next couple minutes or so. And it's been an excellent discussion so far. But I'm still just referencing in my mind, thinking about what you had said there before Devon about um, your thoughts and the means of the way that we think about survival today and uh, thriving as a people.
Can I put this out there just to see how you guys will feel about it? Um, Change has always been slow. I know I'm born in '93, and I can look at when I was a kid in the '90s, early 2000s, in the things that I wanted to do, right? Society was vastly different than it is in 2025. However, when the change was actually happening, it was very slow. Yet, those slow changes that happened over the course of 30 years, right, has now led to a vastly different society, one that is so unrecognizable. If you take my 15-year-old self and put him in today's time, he would be so confused, right? And that's just in a 30-year time period. So when we look at things and we're talking about having changes at a biological level, I don't think that it is impractical to say that we can overcome our human need or dependency to survive, to enact our survival and instincts. However, I think that to actually accomplish that goal, there has to be a societal agreement to push us in that direction. The changes that have led us to today, there was an agreement that we made, whether indirectly or directly, to go to get us to this point. I don't necessarily see that happening to get us at a grand scale within a time period a small time period to say that, hey, we're going to be able to override our biology, because that's a huge feat, because that's talking, depending on who you are and what you believe in, we're talking hundreds of thousands of years of things that are just done inside of our genetics. I don't see that necessarily happening. But what I can say to you, though, we will see the effects of people pushing it forward, right? Because communication, right? The way we communicate today is only allowed through the advancement of technology. And when we had that advancement of technology where the cell phone was introduced, or we don't even have to go to the cell phone, but the landline, right? Just having that availability to be able to communicate with somebody from New York to Texas, that has opened up information even more, right? So we're seeing the things that could possibly get us closer, right? I don't know what's going to happen when I can send money to somebody, because I have family all throughout the islands. When I can send them money, what that will open up information wise, because things open up when you decentralize things and you make it widely available. But to the magnitude of which we're going to see it in a certain time period, I really cannot grasp that, because change does happen slow. But if you look in hindsight, change was very fast, and it just depends on what lens you're actually looking through.
It's
But
all
Devon,
relative.
what if there's no technological change necessary? What if our biology was handicapped by the low vibrational frequencies that the fear mongering has done to us, right? Or the
Oh,
environment.
not even that persistence, just the thought of the thought that we have the biologics we already do, but Devon, there's no reason to necessarily change it, but to understand it allows us an ability to grasp the means of learning how to manipulate it how we want it to be, in the thought of cellular direction, being able to give the guidance to your body from an internal perspective, um, not necessarily changing anything of the biology itself, but being able to just control the means of distribution of that information between the sources in which we consider to be ourselves. I think this is, speaking about biology, we're already there. We're already doing it. There are labs that are already out today that are trying to get FDA approval for certain types of means of distributions of drugs, and forms of drugs, of course, and different techniques, which will allow us access to this in a much more commercial setting.
But what if the drugs are just a narrative, right, to convince us that it's possible? I know we're going in kind of like
Oh no, it's a very strong possibility. It's almost a question of like, everything was always accessible. We just needed the means of understanding how to access it, and I think
oh
technology is part of that. I think it's definitely part of that. Persistence. Go ahead. Sorry.
no, I was just saying I like that point. But go ahead, Shelly. My bad.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only way that it would even be capable of accessing all of that, I'm trying to I'm still going back to Death Ranger saying, what if we were able to have a world that was accessible within 30 minutes? And I'm like staring at my tree in the backyard, and I'm like, I love my tree. It's a beautiful tree. I can water the tree. I can appreciate the tree. But if I sit there and try to picture and count every one of those leaves on the tree and think I have to make sure that one leaf on the other side is named Bob or Jane, and make sure it survives that one specific, in all of that thousands of leaves. It's overwhelming for my human brain to even comprehend, or um uh I don't know, to even have to care for all of it. But if I think of it as a tree, as a whole ecosystem, it's a little bit easier for my brain to digest. But if I had an AI, like where we're going, that extra tool, I would be able to remember that Bob on the other side of the world needs to be fed today, and he doesn't have enough money to pay his bills, and all his little details. So I think that that's just the natural progression, and the enhancements that you're talking about persistence. I think it's just the natural evolution that we all kind of have to, and not everybody, that's a personal choice, but I think that's where we're moving towards. And yeah, I mean, if we want to take the world that's so large and make it smaller, I think that's the only way for our tiny little pea brains to even comprehend vastness. Does that make sense?
Very. Thank you, Shelly.
We get 808 back up here. Fridge, welcome up.
I got to run, guys, but I enjoyed the conversation with everybody.
Thank you, Devon.
Be safe,
Yeah, I'm
Devon.
gonna close it up in the next couple moments here as well. And
All right.
you know, of course, the coming off of what we were just speaking about there, Devon, not from a separate from a biological standpoint, the sociological standpoint, which I think is, in my opinion, plays the largest role in any sort of dynamic change in which constitutes a synchronization or a collaboration of agreements and of interactions. The sociological state, I think, can change dramatically quick based off of the incentive of the situation that is believed to be at hand. And I think, we've seen this definitely throughout time, many of times. And I like that you had brought up, historically for yourself, like going through time, it was like, changes weren't happening, but then you look back and you're like, oh my gosh, what, looking back through the looking glass, you're like, that's my past, really. Um, and I think we underestimate what can be accomplished in a decade, but overestimate what we think we can do in a year. And so, we talk short term. Of course, I talk like 5 to 10 years usually, because we really do overestimate what we can do short term, but long term, the magnificence that comes from a couple of years of development into any sort of subject we seem to devote our works to, our magic to, it manifests.
Manipulation, transformation, manifestation. The three principles that was given to humanity. I definitely agree with everything you just said, man. But I do got to run, so I'll be back, and you're going to have the space up in like 30
Say that one
minutes.
more time. One more time. Say that one more time.
Uh, 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 Manipulation, transformation, manifestation.
Beautiful. Thank you, Devon.
No problem. Peace, guys.
See you a little later, Devon. Yeah, and with that, any closing thoughts? 808, persistent, shellfish. You guys have any thoughts that you'd like to end on?
I don't know. I kind of look at the looking glass now like a peephole to where you think the world is kind of going. I think that's where I'm at right now, as far
I think
as
this space is like a
where,
looking glass.
right?
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Because we're all picturing things in our minds right now, right? And I think that's so important in order to manifest things. You have to be able to, picturize it, visualize it, right? And then you speak it into existence. And I'm sorry to interrupt you, Shelly. Go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Oh God, no. I remember doing manifestation like Devon was saying, and I would always close it with this or something better, because the world is so much bigger than I could ever imagine, like the possibilities. So I'm always like, okay, I want a truck, this or something better. Like, so um, maybe my brain can't see what the future's holding. So looking through the glass, saying this or something better, and that's the kind of vision I'm putting out there.
No, I really like what you're putting out, especially with your tree and leaf analogy. It's really like how that saying I always say, learning how to manage yourself. And we have noise from every source of direction, even from within our own circle. We have noise, and some of that noise really plays to how we control our intention and what we manifest, and how we physically manifest is also is controlled by what we think. And when we think out loud, that thought is physically manifesting itself. So that it's very mind blowing to when you actually start to put into practice that saying, learn how to manage yourself in multiple different situations. You start to learn the true essence of what my ancestors called aloha, and what is meant to be thought and thinking out of other than yourself, but for the better, greater good. Even though we are able to survive and thrive through our own personal gains, Well, those personal gains doesn't have to come at the expense of others and their survival and their ability to thrive. All these things are able to be done in co-unison with everyone. Nature, we have that understanding within nature with that process of growing and that like three sisters combination, those types of plants, like how we're sharing with the land distribution and Ahupua'a system within the island culture. And yeah, I also have a lot of different other models like that that rings out throughout history and all of our different generations. Models we still use today in a lot of different algorithms and consensus mechanisms even blockchain uses, which is so crazy to see how technology and understanding of history co-ops and lives together to provide means in a forward-thinking universe we live today. It's mind-blowing.
100%. The information you bring 808 is mind blowing. All of every day, you allow me to understand a new interpretation of reality, and I don't think there's anything more mind blowing than that.
I
We did
agree,
have.
man. Thank you, Death. You're the man. Thank you for all you up here. Everybody's in the room.
Yep.
It's all collective, right?
Thank you for
Yeah.
persistence. That's it. We're all here on a sync. Exactly it. And we did have Money and Deborah. You came up, guys, right at the end of the space, right where I was about to close it. If each of you guys would like to get a line in, please feel free to jump in real quick, and I'll close up afterwards.
Well, hi everyone. I was just going to say with the amount of disclosure that's happening also politically and everything that we're going to be coming to know, we're on the precipice of understanding our world in a different way. That is going to allow us to break the limits on the way that we think. I think that there's some great things coming in the way that we can invent and create, and it's going to be mind blowing, and I'm very excited for it.
Love it. Disclosure. Love that. Word of the night. We'll finish off right there. Deborah, thank you very much. Love you guys. I hope everybody has a great rest of the night and a great rest of the week if I don't see anybody later this week for another IOV space. But hopefully we'll see everybody a little later. Keep these XRP Ledger community DLT spaces going. The community has been on fire. Yep. Either way, though, everyone have a great rest of the night.
Thanks, Death.
Thank you. Love you guys. Thank you, Persistence. And aloha, brother.